This is the Business Class News Show, where we talk about trending business topics that impact your daily business life.
Good morning and welcome to Linked AM, and we are continuing this conversation about how do we make sure that next year is a good year for all of us. And one of the things that we've been getting is emails from people that have been watching the segments, and something that's really stood out is they're either thinking of starting a business and saying, look, is there any advice that we can sort of give out there, or they've got an existing business and they want to sort of see how they can maximize on the performance. So I was thinking about this, and I've got a very good friend of mine over in the UK. As you can tell, I'm from the UK, and people that know me know I'm from Manchester, but I live in Dallas now, Texas. But I've got a friend over in the UK called Andrew Priestley. Andrew is an award-winning author, and actually has got a couple of books out. Money Chimp was one of them, and he's just launched a new book called Starting. So I thought it would be good to have Andrew on the show and talk about how his thoughts on this topic. So, Andrew, welcome to the show, and I really want to sort of dive into this new book that you've written. So, tell us more about the book Starting.
Well, Starting. Firstly, thanks for having me on this show.
Hey, it's good to have you.
Isn't it weird? I'm an Aussie living in the UK.
Hey, it's we all move around. We're an international show, so that's good.
That's how it works. Starting is at the moment it's on Kindle. It's coming out in paperback very, very shortly. But I'm a business coach, and I've been business coaching since 1999. And I started off in high-end compliance, life and limb industries. And whatever I learnt there worked incredibly well. And I said, I wonder if this works with ordinary business owners, managing directors, general managers, and that sort of thing. And it works incredibly well. And so we were running events for very well-established businesses. And the thing that I noted, particularly around 2009, when we were going through the global financial crisis, if you remember when that was just kicking in, particularly in the USA, you had a phenomenal amount of people who were made redundant. I mean, it's unthinkable. There's something like 8 million people were made redundant in 2009 alone. And according to the US Census, there were 437,000 new businesses started in 2009. So a lot of those people got other jobs, but a lot of them decided they would go and start their own business. And they used their redundancy money to do that. Well, like in the UK, I think you've got something like a 16 to 18 month period before you've got to do your first lodgement with the IRS, and in the UK it's with the HMRC. And 80% of those businesses did not put in a self-employment lodgement, what they call here in the UK self-employment, a self-assessment. 80% of them didn't put in a self-assessment. So basically what the HMRC and what the IRS is telling us is that those businesses ceased to trade in some shape or form. So we looked at why did those businesses not succeed? What was it that went wrong? And the common thing that was common to, for example, businesses that I looked at here in the US, in the UK, and when I was in the US, I was down doing some seminars in Florida, for example. And what the common theme is, everyone's got a great idea for a business, but not everyone has a great business to support their idea.
You're listening to Karl Wolfenden on the Business Class Show, talking about trending business topics and discussing the current news stories that drive our economy.
And I was explaining before we came on air that if you watch a show like Shark's Tank, for example, where you take your idea to the sharks, and if you read the application to appear on that show, you've got to submit a business plan, but importantly, you've got to submit the executive summary of the business plan. And so I was looking at businesses that would come along to our growth incubators, and basically I'd ask them questions that are basically embedded in the executive summary. And there's about 9 key questions that you ask. And so for those people who are starting up, The ones that were at risk of falling over or failing, I would ask them these 9 questions, and they'd get tremendous clarity strategically about what they needed to do in the business. What I discovered, though, was more and more established business owners came along to those sessions because, again, statistically, we know that 80% of businesses, SMEs, for example, underperform. In the US, the SMEs make up something like 89.7% of all American businesses. So this is people with 1 to 12 employees.
So explain what SME is, please, Andrew.
A small to medium enterprise.
Okay, right.
Right. So really, you're looking at, say, someone who'd be turning over in the US somewhere between 6 million. Technically, the space we work in is somewhere between, say, 3 to about 6 million turnover. Okay. Right. But anything under that is a small business, and an SME is probably the 3 million above. Right. But 80% of those underperform. So people were saying, well, the question that I got asked was, how is it that the sharks know so quickly how to invest in something? And if you listen carefully to their questions, they're only asking about nine different categories of questions every time, right? So they're asking about why did you start the business? They're asking about what is the business idea? What are you going to sell? Who exactly are you going to sell it to? How are you going to market to those people? And do the numbers stack up? They're asking those sort of questions.
Right.
So that's what I put in the book starting. I took all of that. And you know what made me incredibly qualified to write this book?
What was it?
Well, I started a business, my very first business, was a brilliant idea because it was an entertainment magazine. I'd been in Los Angeles in the late 70s and 80s, and I loved the Los Angeles music press.
Yeah.
And I went, and I'd been in England and I'd read Time Out, and then I'd also gone to France and seen the papers there, the rock papers there. I went back to Australia and started this entertainment newspaper, and it was so successful that it just about damn near killed me. But money was coming in and going out, and I never saw any of it. And right. I'd started this business as a lifestyle business, and in the end, it got so stressful. At one point there, I was working 12 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week.
Isn't it? I mean, that's what happens with a lot of people that get intensely involved in their business. Yeah. It absorbs them. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So one of the questions in this book is, why did you start the business?
Right.
And are you clear on what it is you're going to sell? And then that relates to what is the business model. So a lot of people I talk to, they're not clear on why they started the business. They're not clear on what the core offering is, and therefore they're not clear on what the business model should be. So subsequently, they end up creating a business where the business runs them instead of them running the business.
I think one of the things that I noted when I read the book was you said you could have this great idea, like you just said. But if you don't really know whether the business is a viable thing, then the idea might be good, but the business format and the model just doesn't fall into place.
Totally. And people say, well, look, I haven't started trading yet. How could you predict that? Well, we know that because banks, if you go for a bank loan, for example, they will ask you similar questions, or an investor. Let's say you go for crowdfunding or angel funding, for example. They will ask you questions because they're going to stress test the assumptions that sit behind your business idea. And a lot of people actually have got a great idea, but they never stress test the assumptions. So starting is all about, how do I stress test the assumptions that sit underneath? Now, again, ironically, the people who come to the workshops and consult with me have already got an established business, but they're leaving money on the table.
How do you mean by that? I mean, in terms of they're not really looking beyond, because they're running the business day-to-day basis. They don't look beyond what they could be, their growth opportunity is. Is that what that is?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, I'll give you an example of somebody who wanted to start up a website for artists to sell art paintings and so forth, and they said, well, what we'll do is we will promote the paintings, so they pay to list on our website, and then we'll make a commission when they sell. Right? So it's a brokerage model. We're standing in the middle. We're a middleman. We take money on the listings and money on the sale. Right? And my question was, I get the concept for the business, great idea. Okay, the business model is a distribution brokerage website, online business, right? But how many people on their team? 2 of them. And an e-commerce site is a 24/7, 365 proposition, And normally you have about 12 people who run it, because an e-commerce site has about loads and loads of moving parts that needs a lot of stuff, right? That's a recipe for disaster, and yet there's people who set up businesses like that. So the assumption is everyone's going to flock to my website and they're going to buy stuff, but they don't realise just what's involved with that. So the idea is, in that case, they will leave a lot of money on the table. Incidentally, that model already exists. It's called eBay.
Right. And you can just piggyback on that.
Yeah, you might as well just learn how to use eBay properly, or Fulfilled by Amazon, for example. It already exists. Why do you have to build it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sometimes, I talk to business owners all the time and business leaders, and they're very focused on, the idea, but they don't actually look at what the competitive space around them is and leverage the things that are existing to enhance it, really.
Mate, I loved rock and roll music. I played in a rock band. I had design skills. I was hot to trot. I wanted to crack on and get this magazine. How hard could it be, to put out a newspaper once a week,
Right, yeah.
I didn't want to do any planning, and I've got to admit, guilty as charged. I didn't write a business plan. I just wanted to get on and do the work, but that's what I see. It doesn't matter whether I'm working in South Africa, Australia, Singapore, the UK, or the US. What I find is people are very enthusiastic to crack on with the idea, and the reality is, once they start trading, then the business stuff kicks in. Yeah. And then they find, wow, there's the money came in, there it is going out again. And why did you start the business anyway? As a lifestyle. I wanted to support my family. I wanted to have a good lifestyle. And
well, I think the business plan, I think, is a piece that is a crucial element of, even before let's get this idea out there, but then let's start writing it down. Because when I used to start writing these business plans for myself, for little ideas, because I'm a serial entrepreneur, I just like to do different things in the broadcast world, man. I know. That's right. Yes, Andrew, I need to go and talk to you. I think that's we'll have a phone call after this. But I used to sit down and then I'd just go and do it. But then when I started to understand, okay, I'm going to have to write this down, and then once you start to write it, it's that roadmap. It's that, okay, I can start, and then I share it with friends and people in the industry, and they go, well, why are you doing that? And then, okay.
Yeah. Do you know, it's a funny thing. I used to be a big fan of writing stuff down, but I'm going to make a really big recommendation for your viewers here, right? Okay. And that is, I use this wonderful little tool called a mobile phone with a voice recorder.
There you go. Yes. Yep.
And if you take the questions, because in part 4 of my book, there's the workshop, right? So you go to part 4 in that book, and you get your voice recorder out, and you ask the question, and you talk to the phone and get your answers to those questions, right? Because people can talk a lot more fluently than they can write. Because I always go back to grade 3 when Miss Kisby used to hit my hand with a ruler for getting bad handwriting. So if I have to write anything, I'm regressed, okay? Right. But I can, as you've already probably worked out, I can talk under wet cement eating an apple. But if you capture that, I ran a marketing agency, and I was taught that these are the BS detectors. Yep. And I don't care how big the business is, when I start digging into why did you start the business, what's the purpose of it, what do you sell, what's the core, I hear loads and loads of BS. Right. And I apologise to anyone who may be offended by that expression, but it's basically people talk nonsense. And so, but when they hear their own voice back, and when you hear your own voice back answering these questions, it will make sense to you or not. And you go, oh, and then make notes to your answers and go, oh, gee, I really need to think that through. So what a business coach does, or what you do, is people use you as a sounding board. They think it out aloud to you, and often you don't even need to say anything because they heard their own answer and they go, oh my God, that doesn't make sense at all. Right. Right, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it amazes me. I think we've got into a world of these things, and we're texting, and that there's no tone in that. And if you record, like you just said, your answers or the answers to those questions, then as you say, you can listen back and hear it. Do I'm going to show my age here, but
you're only 21, aren't you?
Do you remember before computers?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I did typing class. I was the only boy in my typing class, actually. But I did that for a strategy, but I won't go into that.
That's it. Yeah. Well, that's a sad story in itself. But I mean, if you go back, mate, I remember when I was working in the ad department, we used to use typewriters, and we used to use little A4 sheets which we would type. And if we wrote an ad, we'd send it to the copywriter.
Yep.
Right. And because it was so expensive to get it typeset on hot metal and etc., computers came along and all of that disappeared. But what we used to do when we wrote an ad was we used to write the ad and then we'd read it back to cassettes.
Yeah, what are those? I'll put a picture up on the screen of what that is.
That's what we used to use, because the copywriter would say, these are the BS detectors. If it doesn't sound right to you, it's not right.
Right.
And see, so what I watch on Twitter, and I watch a lot of shows, and you've got a lot of people who dole out advice, but sometimes the brain that holds the problem holds the solution, and sometimes we just got to give them time to talk it out loud, which is what good coaches do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think we've gone through all of that element of what the book goes through. But how does it relate to leadership? I mean, a lot of the people I talk to are either leaders in their business, but does the book relate to leadership as well? I mean,
yeah, it certainly does, and in the shortest possible answer, it relates this way, right? I'm a leadership coach. I'm trained in industrial organizational psychology, and I cut my teeth with high-end compliance leaders, right?
Right.
Which I said at the start of this interview. The way it works this way, most business owners, you've got to remember that what they do is immersed in the operation of how business works, and they're not thinking strategically, right? And the brain can't do both. It can't do both strategy and operational. Right, so most business owners I talk to, they're so immersed, they're hands-on in the tools, thinking operationally. They really don't have a plan for where they're going with the business. And when you start thinking strategically, you make different decisions. So the book Starting is a strategic book. It's about where are we going here? It's giving you a strategic snapshot of the business, which once you know that, then all the operational stuff falls into place quickly. So from a leadership perspective, what I find when I work with leaders is we just go through the strategy piece first, and suddenly the immense clarity that they get. And you've got to think this, that when people aren't clear, they're confused, and when they're not confused, they're uncertain, and when they're uncertain, they make mistakes.
Right. I mean, I think
mistakes cost money.
Oh, and that, yeah, and as you said before earlier on in our conversation, we're leaving money on the table. And so if you don't have that clarity in your own business, then that's that's a big mistake.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I had a guy who said, "Are you any good at what you do?" And I said, "Oh yeah, brilliant." And
yeah, there you go.
All right. But he said, "Are you sure these ideas will work?" And I said, "Yeah, totally." And he said, "I don't think they will." And I said, "Are you sure they won't work?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "Are you really sure that these ideas won't work?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, give me equity in the business."
Okay. And what did he say?
He said, "Well, what? Why? Why would I do that? You must know something I don't." I said, "Of course."
And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. That's right.
Yeah. Of course, I can see something you can't see.
Yeah. I mean, you've been doing this for what? Again, I'm not going to give your age away, but you've been doing this for 25 years. It says in the book.
Easily, yeah.
I mean, so you've seen multiple scenarios, and that's one of the things that I always say. If you're going to work with somebody that's had experience, seen failures, and then you see the signs, and this book really sort of just identifies those pieces. Correct?
And is still married.
And still married there. Well, that's there you go, guys. Andrew Priestley, he's the man. Well, we're coming to the end of the interview, and there you go. Yes, I've got one as well. There you go. I've got one as well.
Why do we do that business? Why do we do it? We do it for a family. My values are all around family. I wanted to give my family a great lifestyle. And if I've got the strategy wrong, that's not going to happen.
I think, we all talk about, don't we? Is it a lifestyle business, or are you trying to make something so that it can be, have longevity, or do you want to build something to sell it? So we all have our own goals as such. But at the end of the day, that goal has to have that plan, and that plan, you have to identify what those critical, elements are that of failure. Because I'd rather know ahead of time that I'm going to fail than put all the effort in and then realize that I've just wasted 6 months or whatever. Do you
know that's well spotted, and a really good point here. I've learned over, and you probably learnt this too, because we both got snow on the roof, mate.
No, this is just for men. Yeah.
This is Grecian 2000. Yeah. No, the issue here, mate, is that there's no such thing as all of a sudden in business. You always get a heads up, and so it's a really astute point you made. You always get a heads up about what's happening. The thing is, will you pay attention though?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andrew, we could be talking forever, and I want you back on the show. I think we should do a series of little things. I think we should. So first of all, well, not first of all, because we've already done the first bit. So where can we find Starting? I mean, that's what I want to know.
So you can find Starting and the Money Chimp. So if you've got 18 to 25-year-old children, that is the must-read. Because our 18 to 25-year-olds spend 130% of their income. Most 18 to 25-year-old American children have $20 in their wallet, $9,875 in credit card debt. So that's a good book to read. But you can get it on Amazon.
Fantastic.
Just go Amazon Kindle. The paperback's coming out in about a month's time, but Amazon Kindle, if you want to grab it, it's there on Kindle right now.
Well,
Amazon.
That's great. Well, I'll put a link on the screen as well of how to find it. But I really appreciate you spending the time with me, Andrew. There you go. It's on the screen. But I'll put all the details on the website, linkedam.com. And there's Money Chimp as well. That's where the money is. Andrew, appreciate it, my friend. Have a great morning. And we'll have you back on the show, I'm sure.
Easily. Loved it. God bless everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Upgrade your listening to Business Class, the show that puts you in the big leather comfy seats. So sit back and enjoy our take on the trending business issues of the week.